Senator Heinrich, thanks for making the time.
Absolutely. Glad to be with you.
I imagine most of our viewers have heard of AmeriCorps, but they might not know kind of the breadth of what this agency does. Where does it show up, not only in New Mexico, but communities across the nation?
Well, broadly, think of it as kind of like most people are familiar with the Peace Corps. Think of a domestic program to support all kinds of activities. And in particular, I mean, really, AmeriCorps has probably its biggest footprint in rural communities across the country. So I did natural resources work as an AmeriCorps member back in the 1990s. If you think about groups like Rocky Mountain Youth Corps do a lot of AmeriCorps programs. We have tribal schools and tribal programs that do natural resources work, veterans services, senior services. It really is a broad sort of service volunteer program that is utilized usually by people either early in their career or in their retirement. Disaster relief is another example. There are a lot of AmeriCorps programs that have worked on disaster relief over the years. And they're able to do that on a service basis for a very small amount of federal funding. If you think about hiring someone to work at FEMA or to work at one of the public land agencies, right out of the gate, you're talking about, $50,000+ plus benefits. Whereas this is just a stipend and some educational awards. But the people who participate in AmeriCorps tend to go on and do a lot of other big things over the course of their career.
Like maybe being a U.S. Senator.
For example.
You mentioned you're an alum. I want to get to what you took from the program. What was that like?
I think the thing that really surprised me was just how rewarding service was. Being part of something that's bigger than you yourself as an individual, I found very rewarding. And I think that's endemic across the AmeriCorps program.
Mm-hmm. With the idea of kind of what AmeriCorps is, I do want to shift a little bit and talk about where the program is today, which is basically gutted, yes?
Yeah, it's in shambles. I mean, so many people were let go, fired unceremoniously, probably illegally, because this administration is violating a number of statutes, including the Impoundment Control Act, because these were AmeriCorps staff who Congress had funded, and the previous president had signed those funding bills. So firing them without cause is not a legal action, but that's precisely what this administration has done.
And in terms of some of these numbers, Jennifer Bastress-Tomasebi, the interim head of AmeriCorps at the moment, said last month she put 85% of the workforce on leave. The New York Times says the agency listed in the top 3 of its federal layoffs tracker at 93% of the agency. Do we have a sense of the scope?
Those numbers sound accurate to me based on what I have seen. And that translates to almost 100 people right out of the gate in New Mexico, and then another 100 over the course of the summer that had planned on doing AmeriCorps service projects in the summer that now are making other plans.
And so they had to just get out of the sites that they were stationed at, or what did that look like?
Yeah, precisely.
I'm wondering to what degree the AmeriCorps cuts that we're seeing, and for reference on funding, we talked about staffing. The Trump administration has terminated nearly $400 million in these federal grants nationwide, including nearly $2 million just here in New Mexico, with 6 programs and 1 planning grant. To what degree are these kinds of cuts warranted, considering the agency has failed audits 8 years in a row now, and according to the independent auditor that conducted those, has 11 material weaknesses, which include financial reporting and grant processes, and 2 significant deficiencies?
So there are real audit issues with AmeriCorps, and some of that is endemic in really working with small volunteer-based organizations. Most of those findings are not the kind of findings you think of that would equate to corruption. They're findings where the reporting was simply not adequate, or so I'm not going to minimize those. Like, we should do a better job of making sure that that is a very seamless reporting system. But when you stack those findings up against the incredible services that AmeriCorps has done across the country, and Republicans and Democrats alike have seen this agency work in their local communities on things that they really care about. There's a reason why that AmeriCorps continued to get funded under the appropriations process, and it is the value of those programs. So should we work on their reporting deficiencies? 100%, absolutely. Should you fire people who have done nothing wrong for no reason? That's the kind of chaos that we have seen this administration invoke across the board, everywhere from the Veterans Administration to the Department of Agriculture to AmeriCorps. And you know, that's a difference from the first Trump administration. I think what I've seen different in this Trump administration is there are now so many very extreme demagogues in the White House who believe that even when government is doing something like veterans health care, that it is inherently bad.
DOJ's efforts to cut government spending is being done, at least in the name of eliminating fraud, waste, and abuse. Are you saying you haven't seen any fraud, waste, and abuse in AmeriCorps?
No, I'm saying that there has been waste and that we can do better.
Okay.
However, that does not justify completely getting rid of the organization. And if you stack up, the original DOJ was the Government Accountability Office. And for every dollar we put in the GAO, we get over $100 back in savings. That's a very efficient way to save money. What we've seen with DOJ is that they put a bunch of numbers up on their website about savings, and those numbers just are false. They have been incredibly inefficient at their ability to actually produce savings. I think that their point is really to create chaos in the government.
A number of news outlets have gone through those numbers on the DOJ website and found them riddled with mistakes. What you're talking about makes me think about the fact that government efficiency, targeting government efficiency, it's not something that's new, and nor is it only a Republican mission. Presidents Obama and Clinton talked about the importance of doing this kind of work. So does your party still see streamlining government spending, streamlining the government as a worthwhile cause if it's not done in the way that we're seeing it being done today?
Absolutely. And we should incorporate that, and we have in every appropriations process. So having adequate oversight, having reporting that just makes sense, that catches that creates enough transparency in the system to see where inefficiency is. Those are all worthwhile efforts. That's different than the kind of recklessness that we see in the current moment. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is that on the Appropriations Committee, there are Republicans and Democrats who still get along and still work to create that kind of transparency and oversight.
Senator Heinrich, how are you working, and your party, but you specifically, how are you working to push back against what you're calling recklessness?
Well, one of the things that we're doing is we're working with folks like the Attorney General of New Mexico, who has actually filed suit on this AmeriCorps issue because it was not done legally. There's a way to pursue efficiency, and there are times when it's appropriate to downsize certain workforce populations. The right way to do that is through things like attrition and through a transparent process. It's not to send out an email on a Thursday afternoon that says, even though you've had glowing recommendations for 10 years, you're no longer needed, you're fired, and you weren't doing your job.
And so that suit, it's using that third branch of government, the courts, to push back against these kinds of cuts, to hold the executive branch accountable. What about the congressional branch? What are you doing and your colleagues doing in the Senate and in the House to push back against DOJ?
Well, one of the things we'll be doing is seeking to continue funding for these programs. and to work hand in glove to provide the evidence to our attorneys general so that they can make the best case.
You've posted a few videos on social media as of late calling out some of what you consider troubling at the federal government. You made one about the parks budget, some of the tax package that the Republicans are working through. In many of them, you encourage people to contact their representative, and that's one way that they can plug in if they too are concerned. For New Mexicans who, for them, that's you and Senator Lujan and one of the 3 Democratic New Mexican congresspeople, what are they to do? Because you all don't need any convincing, I believe. What are they to do if they're feeling concerned? How do they plug into this?
There are 2 things I would suggest, and one is simply, if you are concerned, tell your story on social media. It's still, even those algorithms aren't perfect, they are fairly organic, and those stories get in front of my colleagues, and they do change minds. And I will tell you, my colleagues are rattled right now because so many veterans, for example, so many people upset about Medicaid, are beginning to speak out, are populating their trips home when they go to the grocery store. They hear about it. So tell those stories and then get rooted in community. Like we have so many good organizations in New Mexico. Find a like-minded community that you can be a part of and be part of an alternative reality that does good things in our great state of New Mexico.
U.S. Senator Martin Heinrich, thanks so much for your time.
Glad to be with you.